Football Show, September 30th. Just got a couple things. First, I want to talk about the U.S. men's national team as we finish up the international break. My son is over in Germany with Schalke 04. Him and his teammates were able to go to the U.S.-Japan game last Friday. I was able to watch the first half and had other things going on, wasn't able to catch it. But talked to him, and then obviously at the U.S. game versus Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. 2 games, 2 shots on goal, not okay. There's a couple different thoughts. I've heard some people saying, hey, he didn't want to give any tactical things away. That's BS, to put it mildly. He's got nothing tactical to hide, and it didn't go well. Against Japan, they looked horrible trying to play out of the back. The giveaways were, I think I stopped counting at 25 in the first half. Either they don't have the players. Talk about injuries or whatever, but again, everyone's dealing with injuries, and what I think you have to look at, among other things, is that does he know what he's doing? Is he maximizing the talent he has? And I think I wrote down, 4 glaring omissions from the squad. First one being Jordan Pufok, I might be pronouncing that correctly, who's with Urban Berlin. 6 appearances so far this year, 3 goals, 2 assists. He's top level league. That's good stuff, and he's not invited. And his excuse was basically, we know what he can do. Now, is that saying that they're going to put him on the final roster? They're not. No telling. Not having him come in to play in these 2 games is inexcusable. Whether it's to finalize, hey, yes, I'd like to have him on the roster or not. Whether it's getting him in there to play and get some familiarity with the team so that when they do have the World Cup, he has that familiarity. Not having him be invited is a glaring, not just a glaring omission. It's a big problem with what the people like myself have been saying about Berhalter from the beginning. Is he doesn't have it. He's not a top level coach and doesn't know how to bring out, and part of it in bringing out the best is bringing the players that fit. One of the glaring problems, besides the lack of offense, was the center backs. And again, oh yes, we have injuries. Well, there's injuries, and then we don't invite 3 center backs that are available and healthy. Tim Ream, who's playing for Fulham, and the 6th place in the Premier League, the best league in the world. Yes, he's 34, so what? The excuse is he doesn't play the style, because of his age, he doesn't have the speed that he wants to play the style he wants. Well, based on how your center backs did, Greg, you need one that can actually, play at a high level, and they weren't that. So not having him there, not having John Brooks, who's playing with Wolfsburg now, not having Cameron Carter-Vickers from Celtic, all these are center backs that he did not bring in. The center backs that were there did poorly. Not bringing these players in, and the last chance you're going to have to work with players before the World Cup is inexcusable. You just can't run a country and a club and this. We've talked about it in the past about some of the problems in youth soccer in this country, and I think a lot of them are somewhat getting worked out. There's still things obviously that need to be done, but when you have talent and you're not bringing it in, when you have the opportunity, when you're bringing in players like Sargent, who nothing against Sargent, but when you have a striker who's in form and you're not bringing him in, Sargent was a late addition because of injury. You're starting to see Pulisic. He's pissed, and I think rightfully so that that they're just not. He's not getting. Tactically, he doesn't know what he's doing. Not every country can play out of the back like Spain and a lot of other countries want to do. If you can't, then you have to find a style that's going to work. If you're going to do that style, then you got to find players that make it work. And ignoring players players that should be there for players that we know are not successful just doesn't make sense. So at this point, I think, again, when you're looking at a nation, you know, I just saw today we dropped from 14th to 24th in the world, and we probably should have been there all along. You know, we got a little bit of, you know, because, you know, we qualified, but we didn't qualify well. We qualified in the last, you know, at kind of the last second. You know, whether we do well in the World Cup or not, this is not the coach to take us into 2026 and the World Cup in the United States. You start looking at it, and then, you know, there's too much of, oh, you know, you guys are, you know, armchair, you know, quarterbacks or whatever. Well, you know, you don't have to be an armchair quarterback to see what's a glaring problem. The Qatar World Cup is you know, there's tons of real football fans that are torn on, do we watch it or do we not? Because everyone knows that it's only in Qatar, and it's being held now in the winter rather than the summer because of corruption inside of FIFA that allowed you know, bribes and everything else to allow that. You don't have to be, you know, that you have to have your head in the sand to not know that that's what happened. You know, again, you have to have your head in the sand to not understand that this coach, whether we succeed at the World Cup, and I'm going to be rooting for the U.S., I'm going to be watching the games, I'm going to be rooting for us to succeed, but whether we succeed or not, if we succeed, it's going to be in spite of the coach, not because of the coach, and it shouldn't be that way. And someone was saying, do you want Klinsmann back? Yeah, I want Klinsmann back. And when my son was here, you know, a few months ago, when we were talking about it, whether the players liked him or loved him or not, who cares? They're going to play for the U.S. Are they not going to take, you know, when they get invited to play for the U.S. team, are they not going to show up? Sure, they're going to show up. Do you want to be with a coach that's going to make them better? This coach is not making them better, partially because he's not picking the players that should be there, part of it because tactically he doesn't have it. But Klinsmann has a resume that we can only dream of having for our coach, and they got rid of him because he didn't play the politics and some, you know, and everything else, whether it was the players or the upper reaches of U.S. soccer. Well, upper reaches of U.S. soccer needs to wake up. It's, you know, this old boys network that has existed in football, both in FIFA and U.S. and then there's other countries, but we need to wipe that out, get rid of it, and move on to what's going to be the best thing. And part of the best thing for U.S. soccer is U.S. soccer stopping with this, you know, old boys network. We're going to bring in a coach that we like, that we can control. We need a coach that's going to push the limits. We need people that are on the U.S. boards that are willing to push limits and say, we need to take some chances. We need to do something. We're going to invest in U.S. soccer. We're going to find a way to put money into U.S. youth soccer to help bring up better players. And there's some of that is, you know, some of it's not broken. We don't need to throw out the whole system, but we need to trim back and fix what is broken. And, you know, again, we can talk about that more. We've talked about it some in past episodes, but that's where you start looking at from the women's side, and we'll get into that separate in a different time, is basically working well because of certain things that are in place. The men's side is not, and that's, again, you know, that's just partially because we just, you know, the old boys network is in effect, FIFA, U.S. soccer, other places, and it's not working. And again, you know, honestly, if the U at this point, you know, if the U.S. was to finish third in the group, I think I'd be thrilled. I mean, I think we could be possibly in last in the group, and it's not for lack of talent. And the problem with that is for the non-real football fans, for the you know, for the fans of American football and basketball and baseball and everything else, that are going to show up to watch the World Cup and then walk away. Well, the men suck. They don't. But their leader, the leadership from the U.S. soccer to the coach, you know, is not doing them any favors. And we've got to find a way that we're putting the best players, the best opportunity on the field to showcase what we can do if we're gonna have any chance to move up. And, you know, if the other side of that, there's dual citizenship players out there, and they're not necessarily gonna come over unless they see a reason to do that. You know, Man City fan, I've mentioned that in the past, Laporte, for whatever reason, and I still never heard a concrete reason, I'm sure there is one, he could not, the French coach wasn't gonna pull him up. I don't know why, again, I'm sure there's a reason for that, but he wasn't. He had dual citizenship. He switches, you know, after giving France many opportunities to call him up and not, he switches to Spain, and all of a sudden he's starting. Well, Spain's a great country, so to go immediately as a starter says it's not a lack of talent that he wasn't playing on the French team. It was something else. Again, politics, and again, whatever the politics were, you know, but France can afford to lose a player of that quality. The U.S. can't. So if there's a dual citizenship player, whether that's Germany, Jamaica, England, whatever, Mexico, if we want those players, which we should, to play for the U.S., we got to show that we're going to put a good quality team on the field with a good coach, with a good system, with a good, you know, this is, you know, we're going to do this. It's going to be a big deal in, you know, 4 years when that, you know, when the World Cup is here in the U.S. and we're trying to showcase to the world, which I think we'll do a great job of hosting. But it'd be great if we put a team on the field that went far into the tournament, and that's all going to be about, you know, the next 4 years and putting the right coach in place and bringing in the right players to do that. So that's my thoughts on that. Quick aside to Premier League and all the leagues are back starting this weekend. Tomorrow morning you have Arsenal, Tottenham, and a great London derby to start the weekend. Two top three teams in the Premier League battling out to see who's, you know, shows at the end of Saturday who's in first place, most likely. And then the Manchester Derby Sunday morning. So that should be a great game. Man U seems to have righted their ship. Manchester City has looked really good so far this weekend with a few small little you know, issues with a couple ties. But I think most pundits, including myself, think that they're still the team to beat, especially with Liverpool struggling. So it should be a great weekend of Premier League soccer with two huge derbies. Arsenal, Tottenham, London Derby, the Manchester Derby on Sunday. So tune in, watch those games, enjoy, and see how football, the real football, should be played. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Thanks.